Eric Dyer has the responsibility. It's Tottenham against Arsenal. Dyer against Ospina. He scores! England have won the penalty shootout for the first time in a World Cup. They're through to the quarter-finals.
So joining me now is the man with the clarity of expression in those moments of anarchy. It's John Murray. Now, John, we've just shown our viewers the footage there of you commentating on those dying moments, England versus Colombia. Eric Dyer's last-minute penalty. I'll say last minute. It was the last penalty. It was the penalty to ensure that England were going to break that hoodoo, that curse. Tell me how that was.
Well, I think that's one of those moments when it sort of does itself for you, because in the classic style of commentary, that is a say what you see moment, and you are feeling it. You know, though I don't often do matches when you really feel the adrenaline going and you really feel nervous for the players. But because it's the World Cup, because it was England, because it was a penalty shootout and we all knew the history, and because it had been, you remember Henderson had his penalty saved, so there had been a bit of roller coaster there, and there was that feeling they're going to lose again. And so you get to the point where you think, right, this is it. You are then, as a commentator, very much caught up in the moment. But that's one there where you could get invested and you could basically say to the listeners how nervous and excited you were, because you know that they'll be feeling the same way.
What's been your best match you've ever commentated on?
I think the Manchester City-Monaco Champions League tie a couple of years ago was pretty special.
5-3 was it?
5-3, and then the game in Monaco as well, where Monaco, you know, really dominated it. I mean, that was a great tie, that. And some of the goals that were scored in the first leg, Mbappe, you know, was really bursting onto the scene then. You know, City played some great stuff as well in that match. That was just about as good a game, the game in Manchester, and a tie as I've covered. But then the World Cup this summer, you know, that was a really special experience, that. And the one thing was, though, that we never really saw England absolutely dominate a team. You know, and the wins, obviously the penalties win, the win against Sweden, who were very poor that day. The whole experience of doing that was a great one. But I think if I had to pick out one match, it would probably be that Manchester City-Monaco tie. But you know, it's amazing. Sometimes you go to matches and the games that you think are run-of-the-mill turn out to really surprise you, and the other way around as well. But like Manchester City-Liverpool or Liverpool-Man City the other week.
Or Man United-Newcastle.
Yeah, Man United-Newcastle. And the day after was Liverpool-Manchester City, where you thought, well, we can't fail here, and it turned out to be a disappointment, really.
What research do you do in regards to, you're piecing together a commentary, you've got a full 90-minute commentary, often I'm guessing you'll have to read the team news out before that commentary begins and maybe do a bit of a sort of post-show and a pre-show, if you like. What preparation do you do? How do you go about your research? Because I know, for me personally, getting into commentary, I look for every stat, I look for every player, I try and get to know them as much as possible, but there's still things that then I'll watch a commentary on TalkSport or BBC or Sky, and I'll go, where did he get that stuff from? Because I could not find it anywhere.
Well, as you know, there's an absolute mountain of statistical information now that you can get from all manner of places. What I also do, though, as well as that, I also keep my own records. So I keep my own records of all of the Premier League teams, most of the Championship teams, in terms of, and that's team by team, the international teams as well. And I base a lot of what I do off that. So I keep my own records. So that's unique to me. And quite often you will find from that things that you don't see elsewhere and you don't find elsewhere. But I think, and I like to have it all written down. That's just my style. Every commentator is different. Every commentator will do a different amount of prep for a match as well, and a different style of preparation. What I do is, you generally know 2 or 3 weeks in advance of a team that you're going to do, and this particularly applies when it's a Champions League game. So you will try and have a look at those teams, see the way they play, unfamiliar players, That's the case in FA Cup matches as well. If you're doing an FA Cup match and it's a team you're less familiar with, if you can get to see them beforehand, then that's great. But that's not always possible now. But there will usually be video footage that you can see. So that is one side of it in terms of knowing the teams and knowing the players. On the actual note-making preparation, I do a lot of it. So I write a lot down. And if I'm doing a game 4-5 live, you're right. There will be. I might have to go on the radio at breakfast time. I might have to go on the radio during the day. Probably will go on at drive. Then, very often, you might have an hour before the match when there'll be other contributors as well. But there's a lot of material that you're thinking, right, well, I'm probably going to use that in that hour. And then there's the match itself, so I'll do all of the player biogs, and that will be quite comprehensive. But if I showed you my notes, and I said to you, like from last night, if I picked out what I used from my notes from last night, it would be a very, very small percentage. But having the notes there means that you feel that you've got all bases covered. So in some ways it's a comfort blanket, because I find that doing the preparation that I do, and I've done it in a similar-ish way for many, many years now, I feel that process gets me in the right state of mind to cover that match. So I've spent a good length of time thinking about that match and the players who are in it. And as you do that, the mind wanders and you think, well, what happens if X does that? I might have to say that. Da, 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 da. And also as well, I feel that if anything happens in a match, of an untoward nature, if something unpleasant, unfortunate happens, which can happen, I just feel you've got that backup there. If you need to talk a lot about one person who's involved in that match, I feel it's there. You've got it there. So you're going to be covered from that point of view. But what I would also say is, and this is, sort of my, backstop commentary advice, is that all of that statistical information that you can find is available to be found. And it's interesting. If you use it in the right places, it's interesting as part of a commentary. What I enjoy about a commentary, and this is perhaps specific to radio, but I think it applies to TV as well, is a turn of phrase or a description. If you paint the picture in a certain way, that is something that only you are going to do. And that's what I enjoy about a commentary. So the statistical stuff, if you put it in the right place, it's really satisfying. If you get the right information in the right place at the right time, that is satisfying and it's interesting. But I feel what gives the commentary breadth is the stuff that is actually personal to you and your own take on it.
And okay, so you've told me about your best match. Have we got a best stadium, a location where you go, that is where, if you had to do your last commentary tomorrow, where would it be? Well,
my favourite sporting stadium by a distance is Lord's. I absolutely love Lord's Cricket Ground. I've only done a tiny amount of cricket commentary, never commentated at Lord's, but as a punter, that's my favourite ground. Football grounds, Chelsea's pretty good. I like it at Chelsea. It's a really good position there. Probably the Allianz Arena is one that is a real favourite of mine. I love it when we get sent there. It's a great commentary position. It's not too high up. It's mid-range. You're pretty central, and the atmosphere there when it gets going can be brilliant. So those are two. But there are so many European grounds that I'd pick out and just say, wow, you've got to experience this. Napoli is an amazing place to go and watch football. Did the San Siro the other week when Inter were there. They hadn't been in the Champions League proper for a little while. Atmosphere was brilliant. But there are so many of them around Europe. So those are a few of them that I would pick out.
So here's a situation for you then. You've got a counter-attack happening. It's deep in their own half and they're pressing forwards, and there's maybe say 4 in the attack for the team attacking and there's 5 defenders. How do you go about orientating where they are on the field and giving the listeners a clear indication of what's happening? Are there certain keywords that you've learnt over time that you think that works for this situation, and I know if I use this, people will know in their heads? Because I keep bringing it back to, because I've been doing commentary at the moment, and I know there's two difficult things for me at the moment, which I've already spoke to you about, is being able to talk throughout the game consistently and actually give a worthwhile account. Otherwise it's pointless not engaging to listen to. And then there's also that aspect as well of when there are opportunities, when there are chances that come about, it's just about getting the full picture, as opposed to just, well, this is the player on the ball, he's taking a touch, he's moved it out to the left hand side. How do you get the full picture in?
Well, with the radio commentary, it's the basic, in that I think if I was listening to this, would I have got a clear idea of how that goal's been scored? So somewhere in it, whether it's actually in the commentary or whether it's in the aftermath, I think it's important to do that and to describe precisely how that goal's been scored, because that's what it's all about, or whatever the incident is, how has it been saved. But I think as well, I was told a long time ago, in fact probably when I was just starting out to do this, very often with commentary less is more. You're not trying to name every player involved in an attack. You're trying to give an overview of what's happening. So that in actual fact, the way you said it there, here come Tottenham. They've got 5 men pouring forward. You don't have to say who they all are. It's 3-on-2. This is a great chance for Tottenham. Rather than the detail, say it, take a step back. This is what's happening now. This is a chance for Tottenham to score. Tottenham could score here, sort of thing. And a couple of examples for you. And the great challenge I find of commentary is that every game's different, every incident's different. Some you describe better than others. The other week, when Chelsea scored against Manchester United to equalise right at the end, so that's great. Big moment, big game. We're high in the stand at Stamford Bridge, looking down on it, and it almost goes to plan, almost exactly how I would want it, because Azpilicueta's got the ball on the right hand side. Great, I can see him, know exactly who he is. Cuts back onto his left foot, crosses into the area to the back post, and so as well, I've built this up. This is the 6th minute of added time. Mourinho's about to win, first time Manchester United at Chelsea.
First win in 7 games or something like that, isn't it?
And the pressure's on, they could win. It's the 6th minute. This is the last attack. This must be the last attack. What another chance. Azpilicueta's got it. Seen it. Crossed it. He's on his left foot. Who's coming in? David Luiz. Brilliant. Unmistakable, David Luiz. There is no way.
He wouldn't miss that head a mile off, would you?
That wrong. He heads it, bounces down, hits the post, comes out. Rudiger, one of the other most identifiable players on the field. I can see him there, heading it goalwards. De Gea makes the save. He saved it, comes out. Then Barkley arrives and scores it. Barkley, a little bit of a problem. There. Not instantly certain it's Barkley, I'm pretty sure. And I find this often with commentary. If you're not sure, very often, who you think it is them. But I've learned just sometimes you just need to just make sure. And he takes a couple of steps. I know it's Barkley, so I said Barkley scored. Chelsea have equalised. Victory snatched away from Manchester United or whatever I said. Next thing, I'm on my feet looking down. There's the screen there, and I see Mourinho's involved in all the stuff. So I look down, there he is. I can see Mourinho down there. Now Mourinho's got involved in and I've got a really clear view of what's happening. Sarri comes in, who's there? I don't know what's happened, but you can say that. I don't know what's happened. Something's happened down there. Stewards have come in. And the whole thing is one of those where I feel, well, I've done that pretty well. Contrast that. Last night, the Tottenham goal, the Manchester City goal last night, which I heard back this morning on the radio when I was on. I thought, it's okay, I've pretty much got that. But when I heard it back, the ball comes over the top. I've not mentioned the fact that Sterling beats Trippier. That's whatever I said in the build-up, the long pass. Sterling here, he's in, he crosses it, Mahrez scores. So I've done all the Mahrez stuff, pointing to the heavens, etc. But when I listened back, I thought, I've not said he's beat. That's a crucial part of that goal, that Sterling has beaten Trippier. Trippier's been badly caught out. So, 2 recent games where one time it's worked out, the other time it hasn't worked out, but you live in that.
finally, I've talked to you about your best match. I mean, we're going to football point for now. What has been your best goal that you've looked back at and went, I was, maybe not necessarily it was a brilliant goal, but the commentary itself, you were just so proud and pleased of?
I don't know about the commentary. Certainly Gareth Bale's goal in the Champions League final last year. To do that was great.
I love that one, John. Thank you for picking that.
Even you.
Even I had to recognise and marvel in the spectacular nature.
So when he scored that, it was one of those where, and I always remember watching the Zinedine Zidane goal from Hampden Park, and I know my friend and colleague Simon Brotherton commentated on that, did a brilliant job. If you ever get the chance to have a listen to that commentary, he just calls that superbly, and that is possibly my favourite goal of all time that I've seen. I just think it's brilliant. But then to get the chance to do Gareth Bale's goal, which was right up there as well, and we had a good view of that as well, and for Bale to score it, that was right up there. Although I thoroughly enjoyed that Rakitic goal the other week as well at Wembley. I thought when he scored that against Tottenham, I thought, you know what, I think that's one of the best goals I've ever commentated on as well. It was superb. But I mean, we're very fortunate. We see great goals scored on such a regular basis now, but there are certain goals, aren't there, that I think just that little bit higher, and those are certainly two of them.
John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.